So we're gonna get started. My name is Sebastian Fernandez, and I am here honored to be with Katie and with Leticia, our panelists for today, on this session on Climate Action Week, which is exploring climate psychology and with a focus, of course, on eco-anxiety. So CANI Climate Action Week is a series of several events that we're going to cover in a minute. But before that, for those of you who are not aware what CANI is a volunteer-based grassroots organization that was created not that long ago. It all started right before the pandemic in 2019 with basically practitioners from this industry that saw the need of climate action within our sector. And that's how we came together. Well, not me specifically at that time, but the CANI founder and the founding members came together to create CANI as a network. And that's essentially what we are. So we welcome you to use the chat function and to get to know each other. We are here for networking. CANI stands for Climate Action Network for International Education, with the need of taking action and advocating for climate action within our sector. So CANI is organized 100% volunteer run, and it basically has a global board. It's incorporated as a nonprofit in Australia. It has a global board and then regional chapters. I happen to be the Americas chapter president and guiding what happens within the Americas. But we also have a Europe chapter and an Oceania chapter. The chapter meetings will be later this week, so we welcome you to check that on the Climate Action Week. CANI has been recognized with some awards, and basically today we have an extensive reach with more than 800 members. And well, that's a little bit outdated, but now we have 800 members and more than 65 CANI Accord signatories. That the CANI Accord is a framework that was introduced in 2021 after a leaders forum where we created a framework with actions for the whole sector to be able to take, because one of the main concerns we were seeing was like, okay, I want to take climate action, where do I start? Well, the CANI Accord is a framework where you can start with, it's kind of a menu of 70 options where you can start and give the priority to take bold action. So you can join CANI. It's absolutely free, and you can also volunteer your time and energy to CANI if you want. If you want to join, it's cani.org/join. You can create an account, and that makes you a member of CANI. And you can also have access to all the resources and all the information on the CANI website. The CANI website is the hub for everything about CANI. On Climate Action Week, as I said, we are a 100% volunteer-run organization, and we welcome sponsors and donations to keep the lights on, because of course we do have costs to run CANI, and we just want to thank the University of Tasmania as one of our main sponsors for Climate Action Week. And the University of Tasmania has created a video for us today, so we're going to share this video 1 minute, and we're gonna, oh, where's the video? It vanished. Not sure. I'm going to check to play it later. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's not on my slides. And the other sponsor that we have is Alleviate Global Consulting. Alleviate, it's a worker cooperative and sustainability training consultancy that helps you, as they say, in the transformation for a more equitable, climate conscious, as sustainable sector. And here we have a few words from CJ Tremblay, the founding member, the founder and managing director for Alleviate Global Cooperative, and she is also, of course, a CANI member, and we gladly appreciate her sponsorship on this Climate Action Week. Sorry about the video. Not sure what happened with that. We're gonna play it at the end. But also you and your organizations can support the work of CANI and help CANI grow in this in this sector, and either with donations or funding special projects. Everything that we do at CANI, as I said, is volunteer run and by practitioners of this industry. Last but not least, before introducing our speaker for today, these are all the events for Climate Action Week. Today we're on day 2, but you also have some other interesting events on measuring your impact, and tomorrow a couple of interactive workshops on the COP28 and COP29, and then another session on empowering green advocates. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Leticia Martinez Prado. Let me stop sharing. Leticia is the founding of MindPlace in Madrid, Spain, and also an associate professor at IE University and Syracuse University and the University of Minnesota. So Leticia is going to guide us today on a very important topic, which is climate anxiety, eco-anxiety. As I was telling recently, just a few minutes ago to Leticia, I came across a study from the Lancet that expressed that it's a survey on 10,000 students, and basically 75% of those express that they are frightened about their future. So it's definitely a very important topic. And as I always say, our industry, none of us here would have a job without students. The students are the most important part. And it's something that today the younger generations are definitely much more aware than before. So off to you, Leticia. It's great to have you here. And then at the end, we're going to be able to have some questions. So
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sebastian. Thank you, Katie. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. I'm blessed to be here, to be with Kenny once again. I met you some months ago, and I was completely fascinated about the work you do. So I'm happy to be here. And we're going to spend this time talking about how we can create more sustainable action, how we can cultivate behavior change, and how also we can deal with eco-anxiety. Let me know if you can all see my screen.
yes.
Can you?
Yes, we
Perfect.
can.
Fantastic. So as I was telling you, these are the topics that we are going to see today. We are going to talk about what is climate psychology and its main issues of the study. Probably some of you already know about it, but we're going to just summarize it. And later we are going to talk about a couple of topics that normally I see separated. Normally we talk more about how to create behavior change, and on the other hand about eco-anxiety, but today I'm just going to try to briefly explain both of them together. Also because when we think about the issue of a study of climate psychology, we can think about a more collective approach in which we try to create behavior change, we try to create that change, but also to maintain it. And also we're going to see it from a more individual point of view, how we can take care of our mental health and how we can deal with eco-anxiety. So in order to begin to see it, defining what is climate psychology, we can say that climate psychology is concerned with emotions and the social and mental processes that have contributed to the ecological and climate crisis, and our responses and processes of adaptation to it. It's a field of psychology that emerged from the real need of studying it and the real need of creating coping mechanisms and creating help. It's also about our social processes and how we collaborate with each other and how we can cultivate that sustainable change, as I was telling you together. So from climate psychology, we are going to see different issues of the study. We are going to see the study of cognition, I mean thoughts, our patterns of thinking, our biases such as familiarity bias, how we tend to think that everything that is familiar to us is better, and why this familiarity bias sometimes it doesn't allow us to create behavior change. Some defensive mechanisms, a term that it comes from psychoanalysis and psychodynamic theories, that describes how sometimes we don't take action because we are in denial, or we tend to over-rationalize certain things, or because we activate also cognitive biases such as self-serving bias, considering that the best thing is the thing I do, or group-serving bias. Climate psychology is going to explain how all these biases, these different patterns of thinking, a kind of collective mind as well, creates some behaviors, and also how it could create new behaviors as well. Climate psychology also studies our emotions that they appear, emotions that they can be more difficult to manage, such as eco-anxiety itself. Later we are going to talk about it, but also anger, frustration, and positive emotions that we can encourage and hopefully we can amplify to try to cultivate that sustainable change. Emotions such as hope, joy, sense of belongingness as well, sense of congruence with our values. Climate psychology, it's also going to study behavior, not just what we think and what we feel, but what we do and what we don't do. And finally, it's going to study self-actualization or growth and resiliency, how we can cultivate a more realistic, sustainable, and compassionate mind, and how we can benefit from it as well. I mean, our mental health, even our physical health. These are the things that climate psychology studies, but to what end? Obviously, to put them in practice. From climate psychology, we are going to see how we can do different things. For example, we can cultivate awareness, create awareness about how climate change and how the destruction of the environment affects our physical, I think our physical, emotional, and social health, because they are all connected. How we can create education and psychoeducation, and how we can help people to understand better how they can create new coping mechanisms, and also they can create different ways of behaving. It also works on validating suffering, reducing the cognitive dissonance, and explaining how we can manage difficult emotions. And finally, it's going to work on, as I was telling you before, changing behaviors. So creating kind of explanation of what's going on, validating why it's difficult, and validating our difficult thoughts, feelings, emotions, and at the same time, encouraging us to take action and to take sustainable action. Sustainable action with two meanings of sustainability, right? Sustainable action in the sense that is respectful with the environment, but also that it can last long, and we can maintain that behavior change in the future. To understand it, I would like to explain you today a bit of the origins of behavior change. When we want to see how do we create new behaviors, why do we generate new behaviors, one of the main theories that we use in psychology is classical conditioning. Classical conditioning comes from Ivan Pavlov, and probably you all know this very known experiment of Pavlov's dog. Pavlov, he was a researcher, and every time he was ringing a bell, his dog was receiving food. So the dog was associating the bell with food, and every time that this dog was hearing the bell, started to salivate. There was a moment in which, even if food was not present anymore, just when the dog was hearing the bell, it started to salivate, and that is what is called association of stimuli. That's why there are certain things that maybe they are difficult, but it's easy for us to do them because they are associated to very positive feelings. Or for example, there are places that maybe they are not super special, but we had a very good experience. And when we go there, we feel very positive emotions, or maybe the opposite as well. That's how we create new behaviors. Is this kind of association between stimuli. If we think about COVID-19, we can think about a new habit that in general around the world we created, that was the habit of wearing the mask, right? Why did we start to wear the mask? A behavior that it was completely new. Well, because as human beings, as animals that we are, we have an unconditional stimulus, that is to be in danger, with a response of protection, protecting ourselves. That is a thing that is like that per se, that is normal, and it helps us to survive. there was a moment in which what it was at the beginning, a neutral stimulus, was associated with being in danger, like, for example, very crowded places or public transportation or things like that. So we started to associate, hey, if I'm in a very crowded place, I need to wear my mask to protect myself. That is how we created new behaviors. I don't know if it happened to you, but I remember that when, for example, in Spain, it was not mandatory to wear the mask anymore. When I was going to the tube, to the subway, it was very weird to me to not wear the mask at the beginning. Why? Because we created that behavior, a behavior that it was completely new, but due to this conditioning, this association of a stimuli, we created it. And this is the first issue that we have when we think about how we can create sustainable behaviors. The first issue is that in terms of climate change, we don't have that kind of immediate awareness. There is a lack of this awareness of a real danger, a kind of immediate danger. It's a thing that maybe we see more in the long term, so we don't see the real danger in the moment. And that is the first challenge that we have as well. How can we create the need of changing? How can we create this real need? And it's a question that I'm going to try to help you to solve later. That creating a new behavior is not enough. We also need to maintain the behavior. There are behaviors that we create them, but later we don't maintain them. And that's something that it happens a lot in climate change as well, and for sustainable behaviors, that maybe people, they join a talk, or they go to an event, or they are traveling and they see the consequences of climate change. And sometimes they create new behaviors, but they just last a couple of weeks, a month, 6 months, but they don't maintain them. Why? Because we also need to maintain the behavior. And here I want to share with you another interesting theory from Skinner, that is a theory of operant conditioning. How do we maintain the behavior? Well, we know that in general, behaviors that they're going to be reinforced, we're going to maintain them longer. And behaviors that they're going to be punished, we're not going to maintain them as long. So it's important to create this reinforcement. If you think about, for example, social media, one of the keys of their success is that every time that people, for example, they are posting a picture or things like that, they are receiving likes, comments, that every time they enter, they see things that they are interesting for them. It's a kind of continuous reinforcement. And this is the second issue that we have when we think about how we can create behavior change, the lack of immediate reinforcements. It's the same thing that I was telling you before. It's more in the long term, a long-term result. And when people, they have a sustainable behavior in the moment, immediately in the moment, maybe they have a kind of intrinsic reinforcement, that they don't have an extrinsic reinforcement. And this is the second challenge that we have. How can we create behavior that is going to last longer, and how we can reinforce this behavior change in the short term? Because if we can create this association of a stimuli, and we can reinforce, we can reward these behaviors in the short term, we know that we are going to create more sustainable behaviors, that they are going to last longer. And again, it's not enough. We have the lack of awareness of the immediate need. We have the lack of immediate reinforcers, but we also know that sometimes we have a very big leap between individual well-being and environmental well-being. I think that from science, we know it should not be like that, because our well-being, as you can see here, this is a model of well-being of the University of Minnesota that I really like, because I think it explains very well how we can take care of our mental health and physical health. And it's explaining that part of our well-being, maybe it's individual. And individual, I mean that part of our mental health, for example, is due to our personality traits, our coping mechanisms, our genes, things that they happened to us in the past, things like that. There is another part that is a social network. Another part of our mental health, it's going to depend on our families, our schools, colleges, universities, organizations. Another part of it is going to depend on our society, our cities, countries. It's not the same to be in one place of the world right now, or in another, in a place that is more stressful, less stressful, in a place that has internal conflicts or less internal conflicts. And finally, we also know from research, and there are lots of meta-analyses saying that right now, that environment, I mean, to have a clear air, to have good products that we eat, that's going to affect our physical and mental health as well. The thing is that probably we see it very far away. We see it like a very big leap, and that creates the third issue, the third challenge also. And you question us, how can we create stairs or little steps instead of challenging and frustrating leaps? How we can create things that they're going to be more approachable, that people, they can take action little by little, and they can contribute to the well-being of their own community, their own well-being, and also the well-being of the environment. And here I have some ideas. Okay, these are like my ideas. Probably there are more, and I'll be very happy to hear yours once I finish. But I'm going to share with you some ideas of how we can create these stairs or these little steps to connect our individual well-being with the environmental well-being. For example, when we think about individual well-being, I think that is key here to validate suffering and to promote self-care and reduce guilt. To do it through psychoeducation, for example, to talk to people about why they are suffering, how they can do it better, but also doing it from instead of from confrontation, from carefrontation, how they can take care of themselves, explaining them that lots of us, we don't have, or we had not lots of sustainable habits because we were not educated on them, because we have not awareness, because we are also vulnerable to the environment. We are vulnerable to the digital environment as well. We are vulnerable to an environment that encourages consumerism, buying products, creating an identity from it. Also because it's easier, because there are lots of immediate reinforcers in doing certain things. I think it's interesting to do this from carefrontation instead of confrontation, explaining people that, hey, maybe we can do it better, but we are all victims of this as well, and we are on the same page, and we are going to try to see how we can validate this suffering, but obviously not seeing it as victimism, not at all, just to assume that maybe it's not my fault, but it's my responsibility. You know, it's not my fault to have certain behaviors or this lack of education about environmental well-being. That is my responsibility to take action. The second thing we can do is to do it from social networks, for example, as international educators, from universities, in families, to create this kind of immediate reinforcers. As I was telling you, the thing with sustainable behavior is that we don't have reinforcers in the short term. How can we create this? Well, we can do different things. For example, creating challenges, creating rewards, doing it quite playful as well, but creating this kind of rewards and this kind of challenges that they are going to stimulate behavior change, and they are going to reinforce our change in the short term and in the long term as well. Also, it's, I think, one of the things that creates more change in human beings is a sense of common identity, a feeling of belongingness, you know, this feeling of that we are part of a group. Again, going to social media, that I'm taking them as an example because I think they are very successful creating behavior change and creating followers of their technologies. Is what they do as well. They create this kind of sense of identity through the products that people they buy, or what they do, or the kind of activities they do, blah, blah, blah. If we think about sports, could be the same. When we create a sense of identity, in general, we are going to maintain behavior change longer, because at the end of the day, we are social animals and we all like to be included in a group. So for example, places like Canny, places like this one, these kind of events as well, they help this kind of behavior change because they are a way to create supportive communities and create a common identity. That's a thing that we can continue doing in other fields and in other areas of our lives. As I was telling you, maybe in our educational institutions, organizations, this feeling of belongingness and this idea of identity. And hopefully, if we do all of it together, we can create it real and sustainable change, assuming that our well-being is very connected to the well-being of the environment, and the well-being of the environment is very connected to our own well-being. But as I was telling you, sometimes it's difficult to see it when we see it as a very frustrating and challenging leap. And we need to create these small steps, validating and validating suffering from confrontation, and promoting self-care, reducing guilt through psychoeducation, creating immediate reinforces, creating this sense of identity and belongingness, and finally creating the real and sustainable change together. These are little steps from this model of well-being that I really like, because I think that is very, very simplistic to consider that our mental health or physical or health in general it just depends on the individual. It depends on lots of different things, but we need to connect all of them. This is about our collective action, how we can work from climate psychology as a community, all of us together, and creating different initiatives. But from here, we are going to jump to the individual well-being, and we're going to see more about eco-anxiety. Here you have the definition of eco-anxiety from the American Psychology Association, the APA. If some of you know about it, probably it's the main institution when everything that is referred to mental health. And in fact, I was reading that eco-anxiety is going to be added to the manual of DSM, probably DSM-6, the next manual of mental disorders. I think that is sad on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's I think it's a good news, because it's a way to put a name to it and to create more action about it. Eco-anxiety is a chronic fear of environmental issues due to the observation of them, due to be talking about them, due to be exposed to them, and also these kind of worries about the future and the future of the next generation. For example, Renée Lefman, that she is an expert on climate psychology and eco-anxiety, she also describes eco-anxiety as environmental melancholia combined with a sense of loss and paralyzing powerlessness. And I think it's very interesting, because eco-anxiety, it's all of this together. I mean, it's stress, it's a sense of alarm, alert, it's about anxiety. That's why it's so bad for physical health as well. But it also has a lot to do with this kind of hopelessness, this kind of idea of nostalgia about the environment, and also this idea of that maybe we cannot do as much, and this kind of hopelessness. And as I was telling you, I think it's interesting to understand it like that, because probably we need, when we think about the intervention, when we think about how we can prevent and how we can reduce eco-anxiety, we need to think about both aspects. We need to think about how we can decrease emotion, how we can decrease the state of alarm or alert, how we can turn down the emotion a bit, but also how we can create more hope, and we can empower people, and how we can motivate to take action, and we can encourage them or all of us to see that there are things that we can do about it. So it has a component of regulating the emotion, but also a component of taking action. Also, as you can see here, when we talk about stress, anxiety, when we talk about eco-anxiety in general, we can see that there are also other symptoms. I mean, there are lots of individual differences, like in depression or generalized anxiety disorder, that there are lots of individual differences, but we can also see other feelings of fear, anger, exhaustion, powerlessness, as I said, hopelessness, even phobia. And there is a psychiatrist, as you can see here, that she refers to eco-anxiety as a form of pre-traumatic stress disorder. Probably lots of you know about PTC, post-traumatic stress disorder, but I found very interesting this description of eco-anxiety as a pre-traumatic stress disorder, because eco-anxiety has a lot to do with what is happening right now, but also with the anticipation of how it's going to be in the future, or that we cannot do as much to solve this issue. And I like to see it like pre-traumatic stress disorder as well, because it puts a lot of weight on the idea of prevention. sometimes from health sciences, I mean, psychology, medicine, all of them, we are very focused on the intervention, how we can reduce, I don't know, like anxiety, depression, eating disorders, things like that. But what about if we can prevent it? Prevent things here always, it's always easier. It's always a way to save energy, resources, and to prevent bigger issues. And I really like to see it as a way to, a thing that we can prevent. When I started to do my little research and to study about eco-anxiety, one of the things I thought is like, well, but this is quite new. Are there validated interventions? Are they validated techniques? I mean, we know that we have very good and validated techniques to treat other emotional issues. For example, we know we have CBT, cognitive behavioral treatment, to reduce depression or to treat phobias, or for example, acceptance and commitment therapy for other issues or things like that. And I was wondering if we have validated and specific interventions to reduce eco-anxiety. And I have to let you know that there is not a lot of research about it, but there is. I mean, probably we need more time, but we can already find validated interventions and validated ways to reduce eco-anxiety and to treat it and to heal from eco-anxiety. For example, fostering clients inner resiliency, to cultivate resiliency, to cultivate optimism and hope, to connect with arts, for example, the use of art therapy as well, to try to build connection, and also the connection with nature. There are different things that we can see, and if you go to PubMed or to any scientific database, you can find validated interventions to treat, prevent, and help to mitigate eco-anxiety and its symptoms as well. That sometimes when I see all this research, that as I was telling you, I think it's fantastic that we are talking about these concepts, that we are putting them a name, that we are creating good research for them. But sometimes when I'm with my clients, I'm not going to talk about my students, but my clients, I have lots of clients in the clinic that they are students, that they are maybe in their 20s, they're in the university, and lots of them, they complain about this thing, and they suffer from eco-anxiety or different worries about the future. A lot of pessimism as well about the world, about all of us as human beings, about the environment. And when I work with them, sometimes I think that to share with them all this research, it's fine, it's okay. But that when they are going to be struggling, when they are going to be suffering, and they are going to have issues to deal with this eco-anxiety, for their minds, their brains, is more pragmatic to help people to deal with their eco-anxiety when they are suffering from it in the moment. That's why one day, thinking about it, I really love acronyms and practical exercises. And this is a kind of resource that I created and I share with my students, getting inspiration from aloe vera, the plant, because it's a plant that is super resilient, and it's a plant that it has lots of benefits for the environment and for us as human beings. We can use this vera as a formula to try to regulate eco-anxiety. As I was telling you, it's just one formula, it's just one coping mechanism, but I find metaphors and practical exercises very useful, especially when people, they are suffering, and for them it's easier to access to these resources, and for them or for all of us when we are struggling, and then just remember everything that is super scientific. So as you can see here, vera, this wonderful part of aloe vera, the plant, it's about verify, embrace, regulate, and act. Let's see each of them. Verify, about validating our suffering, as I was telling you at the beginning, to try to create this behavior change and to try to deal with this eco-anxiety from confrontation and validating the suffering. It's normal, you are feeling like that. It's a real issue, plus education and research about it. So I think that is the main thing. We need to understand what's happening here. Sometimes it's very also useful to put a name on emotion. You know, there are fantastic resources as, for example, the periodic table of human emotions or things like that, that we can use with our students or for ourselves as well. And in this first step, we are going to cultivate awareness. We are going to ask ourselves, what am I feeling? It's normal because it's a real issue, but I'm also going to try to get more information about it. And with more information, I mean, we can go to research, we can see, for example, how we are right now, we can see which is the industry that maybe contaminate the most, of one of the industries that contaminates the most or has more impact on the environment, and then we can rethink our habits. So verify or validating our suffering, but also getting knowledge. Embrace about acceptance of distress and emotions as information. Embrace is, okay, now I know I'm suffering, now I know that I'm feeling hopelessness, anger, frustration, sadness, anxiety, whatever it is. Instead to try to fight against emotion or to run away from the emotion to activate this denial or this avoidance, I'm going to try to accept the distress and to accept that emotions, they are information, that they are going to be with me for a while, and that is fine. I mean that, and that different emotions, they can coexist at the same time, you know? So embrace is this idea of not like avoiding the emotion or neglecting the emotion, but not fighting against emotion either. Accept that it's going to be there, that our emotions, they are informative, they help us to survive, and also that we can have them and that they can be with us. But we are not going to stop here. We're also going to go to the R of regulate. What does it mean to regulate? That once we know the emotion that we are feeling, once we know about more information, once we accept that the emotion is going to be there and that I can take care of it, how can I take care of this difficult emotion? There are different things that we can do. For example, to assume the lack of control, to assume that there are things that we control and things that we cannot control. And there is a part of lack of control that I need to accept, but at the same time, there is a part of this control that maybe I have and I can work on it. We can also practice different practices of self-compassion. Self-compassion as meditations or exercises, or the way that we have to talk to ourselves as well, to try to do it from self-compassion. We have been talking about verifying emotions. We have been talking about embracing them, regulating them, softening them, calming them down. But also we're going to have the A of action. We're going to try to take action that is sustainable, action that prevents also compassion or activism fatigue. So if you think about it, it's this idea of what am I feeling? I accept what I'm feeling. I take care of what I'm feeling, assuming the lack of control and doing it from self-compassion. And finally, about the part that I can control, I'm going to take action. And I'm going to take action in a way that is nice to me, because it's the only way in which I can reinforce it and I can maintain it in the future as well. In order to take action, there are different things we can do. For example, we can think about two concepts of well-being, eudaimonic well-being, this idea that when we do things that they are congruent with our values, with our identities, we're going to feel better. We're going to feel in congruence. We are going to feel much better with ourselves and our values. And also there are things that we can do about hedonic well-being. Hedonic well-being is about the little positive emotions or daily emotions that we can feel, or the little pleasures. And one thing we know from research is that nature, green and blue spaces, even more green spaces, they create better well-being, more calmness, and more joy. So there are different things that we can do, different ways in which we can take action. For example, connecting with nature, volunteering as a way to be congruent with my values, changing this habit, repairing this thing, things that they can contribute to this eudaimonic and hedonic well-being. So just to summarize it again, if you want to practice Vera, or if you want to recommend it to people you know, your students, your family, friends, it's about verify and validate, embrace the distress, regulate your control and lack of control, And finally, take action for your well-being and the well-being of the planet. And that's everything I have for you about collective change when we talk about well-being and climate psychology, and also how we can take care of our own eco-anxiety. Here you have my contact, and if you have any question, comment, I'll be happy to respond to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Leticia. Just checking you can hear me still.
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So the last section, my microphone decided to not work. So such a interesting and hugely important topic. And please do pop any questions that you might have for Leticia. We either put them in the chat or raise your hand if you wanted to share anything or ask in person. We did have one question from the last session, which I thought I'd just raise again here, which is just those really simple practical tools that we can use for students, well, and colleagues, I suppose, but you know, within our own institutions, to even just start talking about climate anxiety, or to, yeah, just to some simple things that we can do on a sort of regular basis.
Yeah, as I was telling you, we can use Evera as a general concept, but if we want to have more specific tools, there are different things we can do. I'm going to put them on the chat so you can all see it, okay? You can take a look to the periodic table of human emotions, for example, and you have it in different languages. If you Google it, you are going to access to it. And to label the emotion, to name the emotion, it helps all of us when we're struggling, because it creates awareness, but it also activates the prefrontal cortex of our brain. So it's going to help us to feel better. But that's not all. I think that I was recommending in the first session today as well, they are practices of self-compassion. And there are lots of them, but I really like some resources from Christine Neff. She's a researcher and expert in self-compassion. And if you go to her website, you can find like meditations, but also exercises, ways to talk to ourselves better, and also ways to deal with emotions. So, I mean, we have like general tools, but these are specific tools that I really like and I have been using with my students and clients and for myself as well.
That's wonderful. Does anyone else have any questions for Leticia? I've put a copy of the slides in the chat, and obviously there's Leticia's email there. But is there anything else anyone would like to talk about or raise? Mark, hello.
I have a question. Hi, Leticia. Thank you. That was fascinating. I've been taking a lot of notes here. So my name's Mark Blakemore, and I'm with an Irish-based provider. So we run study and internships for students in Ireland. The question, or the problem we have, is this. So we run an accredited climate literacy and action micro-credential for all of our students. But all of our students, who are mostly American, are with us for just a semester, and in some cases a whole year. And we found that for the semester, the actions that we are prompting students to do through our micro-credential, it's taken on board. Students write these climate action plans, and there's lots of enthusiasm. But after those 3 months, we're here and we look on LinkedIn, and all those old behaviors that the students were coming with in the first instance, they're back to it. We partly think it's because they're back in a familiar environment, as opposed to being in Dublin, where everything is different. So I suppose my question is, well, it's addressing this difference between the short-term changes that students can make, because it gives them that benefit of being a new group, new country, and then embedding that for the long term. So can you think of any tactics or strategies that we can take on board that, yeah, embed some of these changes that we're hoping to instill and nurture in them for the long term when we're not with them anymore?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And to be honest, it happens the same to me. I'm a professor in programs that they are students that they are abroad for a semester or a couple of semesters. But it also happens even in therapy, you know, that people, they they change their behaviors maybe at the beginning, but later it's difficult that they maintain them. There are things that they are related to being in a new place, to be, as you were saying, in a new group. And that's why it's important to there is a concept that is called intermittent reinforcement. Instead of continuous reinforcement, kind of intermittent reinforcement, that maybe we can do different activities in different moments that they are going to have different reinforcement. I don't know, like rewards or things like that. But maybe it's easier than instead to do everything at the beginning, to do it, I don't know, like depending on the program or depending on the client, but to do it every 2 weeks, 2 months, changing the periodicity of challenges, of rewards and things like that, because we know it can create change longer. Intermittent reinforcement is one of the things that creates change. Is one of the most useful tools to create change, because if not, we have a kind of habituation, you know. And I think it happens in my programs as well, and even with clients. So to try maybe to plan it in advance and create different activities and different challenges that maybe they are not every 2 weeks, sometimes they are every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, twice in a week, you know, and that they are providing some rewards or creating some kind of reinforcements. I don't know if I respond you.
No, you did. I think the take home for us over time, and you've reinforced some of this there, is that change in a short term, whether it's 1 week or even 3 months, is more or less impossible. I think the change has to come through partnership. So for universities, colleges, or educational providers that are trying to make a difference, doing this thing collaboratively over 3 or 4 years is more likely to make a difference.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the study abroad is a very meaningful experience, but it's very short in time. You know, it's a very small portion of time. And probably ideally what would be better is that we can collaborate with host universities and home universities, and to create this kind of congruence and this kind of way to create change in the long term, as you were saying.
Yeah, and I have to say, and this is just a general point now, that this idea of having champions in the link of universities, colleges and providers that students will be involved with is really important. Because to say, if a student comes over to a study abroad provider or they're back on the home campus, it's great to say, you know, all parties need to be involved, but universities are big beasts. So champions that are pushing this agenda at certain points, whether it's through the career centre or I know other support services or faculty, you know, that needs to be applied throughout.
Yeah, I think that would be great, exactly, because if not, it's too general. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Well, we're coming towards the end of the session, so if anyone else has anything to add, please jump in. Otherwise, I really thank you so much, Leticia. Honestly, so fascinating. And so it's actually good to hear that, you know, climate anxiety, I think I mentioned this last time, is actually being recognized more formally in terms of like the realms of like mental health. And I do remember, actually, this would be a couple of years ago now, I did the Al Gore sort of climate reality leadership course, and it was over about 2 or 3 days. And because they were sharing so much information about kind of the state of the world, I actually remember feeling like almost like I was anxious. I was so overwhelmed because I had all this sort of download of what is going on in the world over a couple of days. And yeah, so I mean, I think it can affect anyone. And we had a gentleman in a different session the other day around sort of networking for early career researchers, and he trained as a meteorologist. So he said that he can go to sort of any country and he can see if there's an anomaly in the weather. He said that makes him really anxious on a sort of like regular basis. So it's interesting how it kind of affects us in different ways. And, you know, and that feeling of anxiety or sort of hypervigilance it's not nice to carry that around. So I think the more we talk about it and the more tools that we have, you know, to sort of deal with it, it's great. So yeah, thank you once again, Leticia. So this will have been recorded. We are going to put it up on YouTube. We've got a YouTube channel. We're going to follow up with everyone, so you can have all the links and everything at the end of Climate Action Week. But thanks again for coming along, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. It's 10 to 4 in the morning here in New Zealand, so I'm going back to bed.
Yeah, so let's go to rest, Katie.
Yeah.
And thank you again for having me.
All right. Many thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.